We're back with another head-to-head comparison test, gas versus electric. This time it's the 2022 KTM 300 XCW versus the KTM Freeride E-XC. Now, the 300 is one of KTM's premier flagship motorcycles. This is the ultimate Rocky Mountain single-track machine. It is a TPI, fuel-injected two-stroke, and it's an amazing motorcycle. I've been riding XCWs out here for the last 6 years, and I absolutely love these machines. I think they are one of the sharpest tools for Rocky Mountain riding. But on the other hand, we have the KTM Freeride E-XC. And range aside, I've been riding both of these bikes out on this type of terrain quite a bit, and I do feel pretty fast on the Freeride E-XC. So for my curiosity alone, I'm trying to do a bunch of these head-to-head comparisons to see how close I can get these bikes. I think this is a very fair comparison. These are two enduro machines on an enduro trail. So you guys know the drill. I'm gonna use my LITPro GPS tracking device. I'll go do one warm-up lap, and then I'm gonna lay down 5 of my fastest laps on the KTM 300. I'll then go back out on the KTM Freeride E-XC. I'll lay down 5 laps on that bike. We'll compare and contrast and see what we come up with. All right, starting out on the KTM 300 XCW. I already warmed it up, don't worry. All right, so if you see my videos in the past, you've probably seen this track before. It's pretty tight and kind of technical. It's a good enduro loop, and this is arguably the best enduro bike that money can buy. It's a KTM 300 XCW, and it has been a staple in KTM's lineup for many years. My last bike was a 2015, and that was back when these were carbureted. And the old frame design, these bikes have come a really long way. The geometry's improved, suspension's better. And these TPI bikes are pretty incredible because they're fuel injected, and that means they run really clean. There's no bog. Like I had on my 2015. It's butter smooth. Now this is only my second ride on this bike. It's technically broken in to the point where I can ride it as hard as I can ride it, at least on this trail. But yeah, if you haven't ridden one of these fuel injected two-strokes yet, I highly recommend it. They're pretty amazing. And the 300 is an incredible bike. It is so easy to ride in the low RPMs. It just lugs, and then when it revs up, it makes a lot of power. There's a reason that this is one of KTM's flagship bikes, and a reason why out west we see a ton of guys riding these. pretty much the same bike as last year. This is a 2022, and in 2021 it's basically the same bike, just different plastics and seat and some styling things there, but outside of that, pretty much the same bike. I've heard people refer to this bike as having an electric feel, which is good. Probably a good comparison for the actual electric KTM. There's plenty of ignition changes and power valve changes, throttle changes that you can do to this bike that I'm still going to be figuring out. I've got everything just set neutral right now, the way that it came. But it's almost like a little too mellow off the bottom, which is great for hill climbs and that type of thing, but it takes a little bit for the bike to wake up. That might make it faster though, because you're not spinning out. Either way, the power is more mellow than you would expect for a 302 stroke. Like I said, it does liven up when you grab a handful, but it's pretty manageable otherwise. The reason I wanted to do this is because this is like the best dirt bike that you can pretty much buy for the type of riding that I'm doing out west. And I absolutely love this bike already. But I feel pretty fast on the Freeride. I've really gotten to know that bike pretty well. And I'm just curious for myself how fast I can go, or what the time spread is rather between the two bikes. So this bike's completely stock. I put a skid plate on it just to protect it from the rocks up here, but I haven't done anything to it. This should be a good benchmark. Man, I would have thought I'd stalled there. I was a little apprehensive about the TPI at first, because one of the beauty of two strokes is that they're simple, but man, changing elevation like we do up here, it's pretty awesome to not have to mess with the carb. I know this channel is about electric motorcycles, but man, this is such an excellent bike. I do have to be honest in that I ride a lot of gas bikes still, and I love them. You just can't do the rides that we do out here on electric quite yet. I'm looking forward to the day that you can, but if you want to actually ride out here, you gotta have a gas bike. All right, guys, just finished up my laps on the 2022 KTM 300 XCW, and I gotta say, this is an absolutely fantastic motorcycle. I love it. I mean, I've been riding a 2015 XCW for the last 6 years, so I feel pretty at home on this bike immediately, but the improvements that they've made on this bike is incredible. It is such an awesome machine. So I'm pretty psyched with this thing stock. There are a few things that I would change. The power does seem to come on a little slow on this bike, the way that it comes from the factory, which is good for hill climbs and that type of thing. You get a ton of traction. It kind of tractors up stuff, but for some of the corners and that type of thing, I want the bike to liven up a little bit quicker. So I'm going to mess with that. You can change the ignition on it. You can change the power valve delivery. And then you can also change the throttle assembly. They give you one that hits a little bit harder. So I'll probably mess around with those options, but stock form, it's actually riding really good. The suspension feels really good. I'm still going to change it because I'm pretty picky when it comes to suspension, but this stuff is working awesome. Usually at this point, I would give my lap times, but I don't really want to know what my lap times are on this bike yet. I'd rather just go out and do the 5 laps on the Freeride E-XC and then check them both at the end and compare and contrast. So that's what I'm going to go do. I'm going to go swap the 300 for the E-XC, swap the 2-stroke for the electric, and we will see what we come up with on the Freeride. All right, KTM Freeride E-XC. Going to run it in power mode 3 here. Get the most out of the bike. I'm just going to do this first lap, kind of like a sight lap. Get used to the bike because they do feel very different. Right off the bat, it's very obvious that the Freeride feels a bit smaller, which isn't such a bad thing in this tight terrain. It is pretty easy to throw around. But despite the great job that Full Factory did on the suspension on this bike, you can also immediately tell, and in my opinion, the suspension is just undergunned still on this bike. 43 mil stanchion forks. You've heard me complain about it before. I wish that these were the full 48 mil forks that you get on the 300 XCW, as well as the full-size rear shock. I'm sure there's plenty of reasons why it's not that way, but that's a complaint of mine. Yeah, you're just always in the right gear on this bike. It's definitely pretty noticeable. I said that there's no real bog on the TPI 2-stroke, but there's definitely no bog on the electric. Linear power all the time. Another weird thing to get used to is the rear brake being up where the clutch is on the 300. It's nice because you can keep your foot on the pegs, or feet on the pegs rather, but it's kind of hard to modulate. Another thing I've complained about in the past, another thing that I will be fixing, or changing rather, on this bike, but haven't had the parts to do it yet. Everybody tells me why I shouldn't do it, but I like having a foot brake. But despite all those things, this bike is quick. So I should reiterate that this bike is not completely stock. I have had the suspension run through by Full Factory. It does have an XC Gear Mako 360 bar clamp, oversized rear brake kit, different tires. I think that's about it. Those are at least the big things, but nothing too crazy. Biggest thing is definitely the suspension. which I will be doing to the 300, so might have to do another comparison when that happens. But one thing that's super noticeable that I have to point out right away is how much more I can focus. I feel like I can talk to you guys way easier on this free ride because I'm not worrying about what gear I'm in, shifting. Just twist the throttle, which is pretty sweet. And yeah, the haters are gonna say, well, you don't have the range that you have on the 300. That's true, you don't, but we will at some point. So this is where this free ride feels at home to me, and it should be where the 300 feels at home too. So I think this is a pretty good lineup for a bike comparison, electric versus gas. Same manufacturer, same discipline. I know people have said in the past on these bike comparisons that it's not fair to ride one bike after another because I'm probably tired by the time I get to the second bike, but I'm on the second bike right now, and I can straight up tell you, you might be able to tell by my breathing, that I have a much lower heart rate on this bike, for whatever reason. I'll straight up tell you right now, on feel alone, no data, which we will be checking, but on just the feel that I'm feeling right now, I feel faster on this bike. I think it's because this is such a tight track and it kills your momentum that this bike can just get out of these corners way quicker. I feel like I'm wasting way less time. The more laps I do, the more I get used to the rear brake being up on the bars. But still, not my first choice. The 300 is amazing, but man, I love this bike. I really, really do. Really love this bike. When I was riding the 300, I was thinking, man, this is the best bike ever. The 300 is my favorite bike. But now that I'm spinning laps on this thing, I might be changing my thoughts. If range weren't an issue, it would be hard to not consider this bike. Still reaching for the rear brake, I just did it. I've got so many hours on this bike. Still, I reach for the rear brake with my right foot. Guess you can't teach an old dog new tricks. All right, guys, just finished up on the free ride, and yeah, total reminder that this bike is also a blast to ride. It's honestly kind of hard for me to pick which one I like more because they're both extremely fun to ride. You know, the elephant in the room is always the range issue. The range on an electric dirt bike like this Freeride E-XC is not nearly what you can get on a 300 and not nearly what you can get if you just keep refilling the gas tank on a 300. So Really no comparison there. The 300 blows the Freeride out of the water in terms of range. You know, hopefully these bikes will get there, but in the meantime, we're just considering, you know, practice loop style riding. Which bike's more fun to ride? It's a hard hard decision there because they're both a blast in their own respect. But on the flip side, my lap times are interesting. I got a 3 minute and 2 second lap time on the 300 XCW. That's completely stock. And I was expecting to do better on the Freeride. After putting down a couple laps, it just felt like I was going a lot faster on the Freeride than I was on the 300. But I pulled up my lap times on the Freeride, and those were 3 minutes and 5 seconds was my best lap time on the Freeride. So, yeah, kind of surprised, to be honest with you. 3 seconds a lap slower on the Freeride. And that seems pretty consistent. I was consistently faster on the 300. So cool to have the data, because if you were to just ask me, I'd be like, oh yeah, I'm faster on the electric, but apparently I'm not. So should be interesting when I get that 300 set up better than I have right now, if I can even cut those lap times down even further. But yeah, kind of a shocking result there. Cool to do these tests. I know that maybe they seem a little repetitive, but it's curiosity for me. A huge reason why I explore these ideas is because I personally want to know, when is it time that electric is going to be just as good, if not better, than a gas bike, for my own personal reasons. And that's why I do these tests, because to me, a 300 two-stroke is like the epitome of the perfect bike for Colorado. And so testing the Freeride against that is something that I'm really interested to explore. And yeah, glad we did another one of those. So I think I'll do some more tests with it. I'm not quite convinced yet. We can do some bigger loops, can do some hill climbs and that type of thing. See how those bikes stack up. But yeah, interesting result. Thanks for watching, guys. See ya.